What's going on, YouTube? This is Acadius, and I'm coming at you with another video about Fantastic Pixel Castle's new MMO, Ghost. About 2 weeks ago, they posted a video up on their channel, Fantastic Pixel's channel on YouTube, where Ghostcrawler was getting interviewed by a YouTuber. And we got a ton of new information, and what I'm going to try to do is reorganize it so that I can try and build a picture in your mind of how this game is going to work according to the information he's putting out right now. So this is going to be a condensed version of the video in order to try to save time for you. And if you want to see the entire video, then link in the description below. So let's get to it.
Red shards sounds like World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Blue shards sounds like V Rising or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that an accurate representation of what's going on here?
It's not bad. The tweak I would say is it's still an MMO. It's not like you're switching genres or anything like that.
Okay.
Really, the genesis for the whole thing was older MMOs, like back in the day, going back to like Ultima Online.
I love hearing when devs start talking about Ultima Online back in the day, and then 9 times out of 10, those same devs never really learned any of the lessons that Ultima Online taught us, and then they do stuff like this, but, whatever.
RuneScape, even Star Wars Galaxies made this promise that you are going to be able to make a difference in the world. Like, you as a player, you can go out there and make changes that will affect what's happening. Ultima Online made this promise that if you go out and kill all the deer in the forest, the dragons are going to get hungry, so maybe they're going to come into your town. And that was why a lot of us got hooked on MMOs.
So he doesn't seem to know, but Ultima Online actually delivered on that promise to a degree. I think what he's specifically referring to here was originally Richard Garrett has talked about their vision was a working ecosystem where wolves would, say, hunt sheep, and maybe bears would kill the wolves, and this whole hierarchy of critters all the way up to the dragon, but it didn't work because, of course, players exist, and so players just run around slaughtering them all so that they can get the hide off of them, and then you never really get to see the ecosystem really actually function. So it was functionally non-existent, right? But they did get it to work in terms of like events and stuff that they had in the game. So like Trinzic got attacked by all these monsters, and players had to defend it. And one time they did it, they didn't succeed. So the town got overran, and then they actually killed off all the NPCs, and the town was a monster town for a long time until finally they reverted it back. They had another event, and then the players came back, and then they took back control of Trinzic. That's just one event of many that they did where they actually allowed the town to fall, and the players had to take it back. I think Britain was overran by the undead for a while. So they did do cool stuff like that, and it did work, and everybody was fine with it. It wasn't a big deal.
Over time, some of that has been filtered out, and there's good reasons it happened. If you kill the boss and the boss stays dead, like, what are all the other players going to do, right? Or we got excited about building like V Rising or Rust or Valheim, but said, what does building look like on a zone with lots of other players? You're going to have like...
So he's specifically talking about like custom built houses that you have to piece together yourself, like in Rust. And then, okay, well, you have issues with that. What does it look like? I think it's a little weird here that he's specifically talking about building like in Rust. Now, that does take a lot of time to gather all the resources, and now you can get more time out of the player, have them playing the game longer, but there's more ways to do that. You don't have to build like in Rust. You can build like in Ultima Online, which is exactly what Mortal Online 2 did, and it works just fine. and then you don't have any of the issues that's associated with that.
You know, it's going to look like this dense city of just all of these buildings together, and then you're going to have people like, you know, making phallic symbols or bad words or just interfering with the environment you want to create.
Yes, we have seen these types of player cities before, starting in Ultima Online. You know, players built a city and called it Avalon, and they actually got the devs to come in and decorate the city. You know, put flowers and stuff because we couldn't do that on the terrain around outside the houses. We couldn't do that. But then, see, he's caused a problem by allowing the players to build however they want to, like in Rust. And then, in order to solve the problem, what he's doing is he's separating the world into blue shards. Because if you have blue shards that are player ran, then now the players are to blame and not the development studio, right? So he doesn't want the studio to be able to be blamed for any kind of obscene things that players may build on the main servers. So in order to be legally clean from that kind of stuff where the company can just put the blame off onto the other players, then they create blue shards so that the players are creating the blue shards. It's their shards, and that's what they're getting invited to. And then they just put a little disclaimer in the EULA, and now the company is safe from any kind of repercussions because of that. It's just the most ridiculous crap. You know, just don't allow players to build whatever they want. You know, why would you do that in MMO anyways? Like, nobody cares. We just want to put our house down, decorate it, make it look fancy, and then go out to adventure with our buddies. You know, it's absurd. I don't know why you would ever put that feature into an MMO. But, you know, whatever. It's their game, I guess.
And that's when it kind of clicked that maybe the answer is just to have both public servers and private servers. And certainly not the first game to come up with the idea of private servers, but really try to mix that together, where in the private server, you're in control. If you want it just to be you and your friends and you do whatever you want, that's cool. If you want to let a lot of people in and have a little more chaos, that's cool too, but you're in control of that.
Right.
But in order to get that big, massive multiplayer feeling that we all love, we also need zones that are epic and they're handcrafted, and there are world bosses and puzzles and rare spawns and things like that, where there are a lot of other people. But because they're not permanent, they respawn in the way Final Fantasy, you know, enemies respawn. You won't have that. You won't be able to put your fingerprint on it, but it ensures that everyone will have a good time. You don't have to worry about, someone killed the boss, and now it's gone for everyone.
Exactly what I was saying. I like how he is just like doubling and tripling down on, you're in control of the blue servers. You are, not us. You're in control. Because you're the ones putting the freaking giant dicks on your front door of your house. Not us. Right? We're not responsible for that. You are. But the biggest thing you can take from this is red servers can be thought of as public servers that are curated by the company. And blue servers are at your own risk. Enter those servers. You're in control. And then you decide how things are working. And the only people that go in there are the people that you allow in there, which is basically a single player / co-op game on blue servers. And then a multiplayer game, massively multiplayer game on the red servers.
The structure of these shards, is it going to feel like, hey, I'm in the red shard right now, I want to go to this blue shard. Is it gonna literally feel like I'm selecting a server and I'm entering it like some kind of first-person shooter or like V Rising type of game? Or is it gonna be a little bit more connected to a world where it feels like I'm entering a part of the world that kind of puts me in this, like, how's that transition going to work?
Yeah, we really want to avoid the list of servers, because I think that really takes you out of the world. That feels like you're playing UI at that point.
Yeah.
We want it to feel more natural of, you know, maybe somebody opens a portal and then you can jump through the portal to get to the other, to get to the other zone.
Okay.
And we've even talked about, and again, this is super rough, so we don't know how it'll work, but imagine when you make a portal to go to the red shard, you have to put specific stones into this portal. And if you put in like the gold stone and the blue stone and the green stone, that'll open a portal to a particular red shard.
So first of all, I think he's misspeaking here. He's saying red shard. I think he means to say blue shard. I think what they're going to do is like he was saying with the stones. So if you're walking into the world, you have to go to a certain spot in the zone in the world, like designated locations, right? And then you walk up to this, say, big rock, and it's been cut where one part is flat, and there's recesses inside of this rock, and you would put different colored stones into the rock, and those different colors represents different things that would modify the world. So let's say the red stone could be PvP rules or loot rules. So one stone is full loot PvP, another one maybe semi loot PvP, and maybe another one's like no loot PvP. You know, you just get these different stones. They have different shapes or something, and then you put them in there to make your settings. And when you get done, then a portal will open. You go through the portal, and now you're in your blue shard, and you can start doing whatever it is that you want to do. And when you want to go into another blue shard, then you go back through that portal that's in your current blue shard, you go back to the red shard, and then you go back to the pedestal again and change the stones. You know, and now it would open a new portal, and you go into the new blue shard. That's how I think it's actually going to function, in my opinion, because they're already going to say, you know, like they don't want the serverless, you know, because it's immersion breaking. He's going to mention Mario, where you just jump from one world to another world, but I do not see that working very well. I think that would be more trouble than it's worth, and the stones would be an easier system to make. You know, in essence, those stones are drop-down menu choices, you know, but it's a visual representation of it instead of just looking at this text and stuff on a server browser. So I think that's probably going to be the way that they go.
So there's a little more. It's more in game than just picking a list off a server.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I just didn't want like that immersion to break. You know, it's like I'm
Exactly,
playing an MMO. Yeah.
And we don't want, if we can at all avoid it, we don't want a loading bar.
Right.
Like, we aren't exactly sure how travel from shard to shard works yet. Maybe it's a portal you step through, but
Sure.
another idea I heard that was kind of exciting is like when you're in Super Mario Galaxy and you're going to a different planet, Mario just kind of jumps up and flies
Right.
through space, then lands on the new planet. And so there's no loading bar that comes up, you know?
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. That would definitely make the experience better. The other question.
Yeah, I don't. I also don't see them doing it without a loading bar. At least a loading bar for people that are playing on a mechanical hard drive. You know, maybe people that are using solid states now, they may not have a loading bar. You know, it was nice in Mario because it's a cartridge, so of course it's going to work that way. But that's not how it works when you're playing on PC using a mechanical hard drive. You know, the mechanical hard drives just really haven't gotten that much better in all these times. They have gotten a little better, sure, but for the most part, they're still the same, and they still load super freaking slow. Even if you go like a high dollar mechanical, it's still not the same as the solid state, and it's never going to be. So hardware limitations still are very real.
One of the team members mentioned during the broadcast that, you know, blue shards, you know, maybe you can, you know, full loot somebody, or, you know, it kind of has its own rules.
Yeah.
How is that going to tie in with overall progression? Because it sounds like there will definitely be vertical progression in this game, as I think that's a massive W. But if you have these custom rules on these blue shards to the point where people can, like, I'm just going to create a blue shard where experience rates are juiced out 9,999%, and you know, have a drop rate that's insane, and then take it back to the red shard. Red shards, like, how does that dynamic work?
So you don't have full control over the rules. You have rules that you can apply. So for example, you might have a decision. I mean, you'll probably have a decision of how big do you want the shard to be. And going back to my example of the building the portal, if you use a pebble, it makes a little zone. If you use a rock, it makes a medium-sized zone. If you use a boulder, it makes a giant zone. But you don't have a scalar where you drag it in between.
Mhm.
Likewise, you might apply a rule that says experience is doubled, but maybe that rule also says but death is permanent or something like that. So you don't have, it's not like creating your own game.
Right.
I compare it sometimes to, I don't know, in Halo, I don't know if they still do this, at least originally, you would find skulls as you explore the map, and then you can apply the skulls to kind of make the experience harder or more different.
Right.
Hades did this a lot too. You'd find these rules and apply in the future, and it would change the experience in some ways. We're thinking more along that route, rather than someone can just make this weird server that showers you with loot.
Right,
and then the other thing I'd say about that is it's kind of okay if the loot you're getting showered with is like green items, the occasional blue items. And then to get the good stuff, you have to go into the red shards or into the dungeons and raids to get the really good loot.
So he's basically saying it's going to work pretty much how I thought it would be, where, the stones are set, as in what they can do, right? They don't want sliders and all this stuff, because then people are just going to start gaming the system and exploiting it. He did say, well, it's not a big deal if they, drops a ton of trash, basically, but it kind of is, because then you can start having other problems depending on what other systems are in your game. If he allows us to say disenchant, then you can get a ton of materials from disenchanting, potentially selling them, making a ton of money. And now that could mess up your economy. Even if you don't allow disenchanting, then you could just sell all that gear and make tons of gold, and now you wind up in the same spot with like Diablo, where you've got millions or billions of gold, and it just completely devalues everything in the game, and now you don't have any real reason to trade between other players, which then now that just takes one more interaction between players out of the loop of gameplay. Of course, it doesn't seem like they really care about anybody interacting with anyone other than who they think are your friends. I don't know what in the world they're talking about. What even is this friend thing that he's talking about? Just somebody to irritate the crap out of you, always wanting to come over and hang out, and all you want to do is just play some video games or something? I don't need one of those.
Do you think having these blue shards are going to cause a disconnect and have players kind of scattered to where the red shard maybe doesn't feel as massively multiplayer anymore, and maybe it starts feeling like, hey, this is just where you go to experience the theme park content, and then it's back to the blue shards?
Now, this right here was such a great question. Exactly what I was saying in my previous video about this new game. These red shards are going to feel like ghost towns, and everybody's going to be in their little blue shards like friggin' dwarves, just farming it up, mining it up, building their houses. They got so much content for the blue shards, man. That's all I want to do is talk about blue shards, and nobody hardly wants to talk about the red shards. They literally think that everybody just wants to sit around in their own little single-player co-op game and just hang out with the same couple people and not be around anyone else. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, all of these are risks, and it's the kind of thing we're going to have to play test and further the design and get feedback on. Our hope is that the people you hang out with, your group, your guild, the people you like to play with, they're probably in the blue shard with you, and you all are doing stuff and having fun. And once in a while, you need to make an expedition into the red zone. Like someone says, hey, I need a reagent to finish this recipe I'm working on. Or someone says, hey, I'm looking for this rare drop, and someone told me the boss just is up. Or you want to go raid, or you want to do something like that. You all get together and you're like, okay, we're going to go out into the red shard. Maybe we're going to die. It's going to be tough. And then we'll bring our spoils back to the blue shard and kind of use that to invest in the community we're building there.
So he asked him if the red shards are going to be ghost towns. And instead of just saying, yeah, they're going to be ghost towns, he's like, oh, no, let me paint you a picture of exactly why the red shards are going to be freaking ghost towns. Because he starts talking about you're on the blue shards with your guild, and you're doing all these activities, but then you need this one item. Well, we got to go to a red shard to get it. So let's go to the red shard and get that item so that we can come right back to the blue shard to use that item. So really, you know, yeah, he's kind of enforcing the idea that the red shards, you're just gonna go to the red shard to get what you need, and you're gonna come back to the blue shard again. And you're just gonna do that over and over and over.
Right.
Because even when you're playing World of Warcraft, the reality is your friends are probably scattered in lots of different
Right.
zones, doing lots of different dungeons, and you're talking to them. You're probably in Discord or something, chatting with them, and then periodically you're like, okay, everyone can get together now and let's go do a dungeon. But you're not shoulder to shoulder with them all of the
Right.
time.
So I like how he answered the guy's question without directly saying, "Yeah, you're right. Our bad." Like he just went right around it, and now he's talking about, "Oh well, I mean, you're not always with your friends. You're off in other dungeons. Oh yeah, and who's in those dungeons with you? Strangers that you've met along your travels, maybe, or maybe you got put in with a random group through a dungeon finder in World of Warcraft. But regardless, it's with people you don't know. You're out there doing things with people you don't know. Hopefully, making new little internet buddies, and getting a group together. Maybe you like running with them and you make a guild. Who knows? That's the fun of MMOs. And he's just completely discounting this. He's literally thinking that you've got your bros in real life, or maybe a few bros that you've made friends with over the years, and that's who you play with. Just your little group, and that's it, and that's all you care about, and nobody else matters, which completely negates MMOs and what they do, as a social game. There's a reason why solo players are not sitting there playing Final Fantasy games, and instead they're playing World of Warcraft, ungilded, running around having a blast. You know what I mean? Because there's other people around. They don't necessarily want to interact with them all the time. They don't necessarily want to get involved in guild drama and all that. So they stay away from the guilds. If they do join guilds, they're probably super small guilds, and that's all they'll join. And this guy just seems to completely not understand that dynamic, and the fact that solo players make up a huge portion of his player base, and those players want to be around strangers yet not interact with him. It's completely just skipping his purview here, and it just I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not sure this guy is as dialed in as he thinks he is.
Finish my gear. And then when you reach end game and you really want the good stuff, you want the purple weapons. Well, that's probably in raids like it is in Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft. And so you would do that. The reason developers add daily quest, I mean, I worked on a game that added a lot of daily quest, is because players run out of content. And they're like, I'm bored. Give me a reason to log in. We think we have some reasons to log in. We want to have lots and lots of classes, so we can have lots and lots of alts. We want to have this ability of like re-rolling or pushing blue shards. You keep making new ones with crazier and crazier rules and kind of see what that experience is like.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also okay with players just taking a break until the next kind of tier comes out. Like, hey, we're done. Rather than grinding your face into the ground, let's just take a break until FPC makes new content. That's hard for subscription-based games because they really need to make sure players stay engaged with the game.
So now, once again, he's reiterating on the fact that they want you to spend a lot of time in the blue shards. He's talking about a lot of classes, and then he wants you to create a lot of alts so that you can play all those different classes. And then he wants you to re-roll the blue shards over and over so you can spend more time in the blue shards. So they're trying to get you to spend more and more time in these blue shards, so that they have more time to make new content for the red shards. So most of your time is probably going to be spent in the blue shards by yourself, with no interactions that are spontaneous whatsoever, because the only people that can go into the blue shard with you are people that he will allow to go in there, and that's it. So they're cutting all the spontaneity out of the game because none of it can take place because everybody's going to be in the blue shards all the time unless there's some sort of new content, you know, in the red shard for you to do. And then once you do that content, you get all those new items, then you're right back to the blue shards doing the same freaking thing that you were doing before. You know, just standing around in a circle, whacking it. What in the world? This is ridiculous.
I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard you guys say that at launch you were trying to come out with like 20 to 50 classes.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds, I mean, it sounds great, by the way, to
Right.
me,
Yeah.
but it also sounds insane. Like it's not going to work insane because of class balance.
20 to 50 classes. Are you kidding me right now? And what? They all of them are unique, right? Nah, dude. Nah. It sounds crazy, like it's not gonna work, because it ain't. You know, and it's not because of class balance. Let me tell you, people put like way too much emphasis on balance. You know, and when you have everything perfectly balanced, then nothing ever changes, and then the game gets stale, and you gotta throw something in there to change things up. So it's not about balance. It's about actual uniqueness, which they say they want. But when you got that many classes, you know, it starts getting hard to find an identity. You know, between all the other classes, I would be willing to bet that they're going to be closer to 20 than they will be 50. That's what I'd be willing to bet. That's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be more like 20. You know, I think 15 would be more realistic. But I would say more than likely 15 to 25 is where they're going to land. Because that's a bit more realistic.
And just a lot of things.
Yeah.
What, like, is it possible? Like, what do you walk me through this? What's happening here? 20 to 50? That's crazy.
I think it's possible. The fantasy we're trying to achieve is maximum levels of diversity. So rather than having a warrior, you might have a gladiator who's all about showmanship, or you might have a shield and spear warrior, or you might have a berserker who fights with an axe and no armor. We're inspired a lot by games like Gloomhaven, Darkest Dungeon, even Pathfinder, that tend to have classes that are a little more out there. They don't have, you know, Darkest Dungeon doesn't have a rogue. It has like a highwayman who has like a pistol.
Right.
They don't have like a cleric. They have they have you know, one of the tanking classes is a leper. Just
right.
You can do a lot more interesting things where getting a new class feels more different. If I played a priest in World of Warcraft and then I unlocked the paladin, the healing is not that different. Yeah, the spells have different names, and maybe the paladin's better at single target healing, but overall, they're not that different. We would rather be able to experiment a lot. And the reason I think that's possible is because I worked on League of Legends, which has freaking 160 champions now. Those only have 4 abilities, and they don't have a lot of build diversity, but I feel like there's a sweet spot in between launching with like 6 or 8 classes and 150, where we can have maybe not as many abilities as Final Fantasy, but still a lot of abilities and ways to customize your character, but still make it really fun when you unlock something new and you're like, how does this class work? I want to try that out.
You don't think you're going to run into any significant balance issues for both PvE and PvP if you're releasing these many classes at launch?
I mean, almost certainly we'll run into a lot of balance issues.
I mean, it's impossible to be perfectly balanced, of course. Like
it is. Yeah, and balance is important. And I mean, I worked on balance for most of my career, but you can also focus so much on balance that you smooth off all of the kind of fun, rough edges of the game. And you risk homogenization if you focus too much on balance, where you say, oh, well, this character has a stun and that makes them very powerful, so let's nerf the stun, or let's give everyone a stun. And both of those are kind of lame.
You don't like that approach?
Yeah, I don't like that approach. One of the things that works well in the MOBAs is your character might get banned, so you may not be able to play them.
Well, you want to know something else that works really good in MOBAs? How about you intentionally overtune champions when he first released them in order to get more people to buy the champion, and then a month later tune them back down to where they're in balance so that you can get more money. You know, that's not predatory or anything. That's perfectly healthy for your game. Weird that Riot actually came out and admitted that they were doing that, even though we kept telling them, accusing them of doing it for like 8 years. And then finally they're like, oh yeah, we've been doing that the whole time. Freaking losers.
Right.
Or you probably have different characters. You may have a main, but you probably have other characters you can play as well. So we're hoping there's more of an element of that. Maybe you love, I don't know, let me think of a class real quick. Maybe you love to play the Dragoon. I don't even know what a Dragoon is, but
Wow, dude. Wow. This guy just said that out loud. You don't know what a Dragoon is, but you're gonna make a freaking awesome MMO and you somehow don't know what a Dragoon is. You know, somebody who's trained to fight dragons with a giant lance? Maybe. How do you get this far? You talk about Ultima Online, and now here you are. You've been, hopefully, a gamer this whole time. Sounds like you have been. And somehow you make it to this age and you don't know what a Dragoon is? How does that even work? How does that begin to happen, man? You know, like you just totally don't even. He's like, I don't even know what Final Fantasy is. What is that? He's already talked about the game. But then he doesn't know what a Dragoon is? How does that work? I don't understand. You know, and anytime, honestly, you know, a lot of people are going to say, oh, this is nitpicky. You know, but for me, these are things that I look for that when they say it, it's just like a big red flag going off in my head. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. There's something wrong here, you know? These people may not know what in the world they're freaking doing, you know? That's just me. That every time I hear something like that, it's an immediate red flag for me.
say we have a Dragoon class, but the Dragoon is not good in this particular dungeon. Well, you decide, screw it, I'm going to try anyway. Or you say, hey, I know the Dragoon's just going to slow you guys down. Let me switch to my, my hoplite instead, and I'll play them in this dungeon. But because we have a lot of shared items and shared progression, you're not really hurting yourself by not playing your main all the time.
Are we talking about actual unique classes, or are we talking about? I know you don't have a warrior, but let's just say warriors in the game.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like warrior and then arms warrior, fury warrior, and those that counts as like two different classes? Are you talking about like the secondary classes when it comes to like the 20 to 50?
I hope they're more distinct than that. One idea we're playing with right now is that every class has a signature weapon, and they're the only class that has that weapon.
Oh wow.
So if you find a harpoon, that's the weapon for a particular class, and no other class uses a harpoon. So right away, the arms warrior, fury warrior thing doesn't fit. You would have to say more that, oh, this is an axe warrior, and this is a like double wielding sword warrior. But even that, I think you'd want to push it further and say, this is a Viking berserker and this is a swashbuckler. And now
right.
now they have kind of unique kits, unique feels, and different abilities. Like we don't need to have ability overlap in that world. We can give everyone their own abilities, and they'll be, maybe every tank needs a taunt of some kind, and maybe every healer needs a area heal. But the arms warrior and the fury warrior have a lot of overlap in their abilities.
So they're basically going to be doing the same thing that Final Fantasy did, where if you want to be a dragoon, well, you need to use a lance, you know, and if you want to be a mage, well, you need to use this staff, right? And you just switch between it, and it switches your character. But in this game, you need to create a new character, set them as that class, and that class is only going to be using that specific weapon type, which I don't have a problem with. I think it's kind of silly. How in the world does a two-handed warrior not understand how to pick up two weapons at the same time and then use those? You swing with both hands. It's not hard. Or even worse, let's say you got a dual wield warrior, and then he's using swords. Well, okay, as soon as you put one sword down and picks up a shield, all of a sudden he's like, "Well, I don't know how to use this. What do I do? Like throw it at him like freaking Captain America? You know, like that doesn't make any sense. So I think it's just a little absurd. Of course, it's absurd that they're going after 20 to 50 classes. And he's like, well, I hope that they're more unique than that. Yeah, I bet you do. You know, try to hit that 50 mark and then make them feel unique. And it's going to be harder and harder with every class you add in there. And then you're going after the Holy Trinity as well. So you're stacking the difficulty for yourself on this game that you're playing. We'll see how it works out.
Imagine almost everything is shared across characters. Like maybe their inventory is shared. Like if you find a shield for one character, you can give it to the other character. I mean, why not? Like, what are we scared of to try things like that?
Now, this I can get behind. I've always been and will always be a huge proponent for freely traded and sold loot. I don't really care about this whole between your characters thing. You know, it should just be freely tradable, freely sellable. If you want to do it between your characters, cool. If you want to sell it to other people, cool. It's your loot. You earned it. You can do whatever you want with it. You know, the only purpose for having account locked or soul bound type items is purely for time gating purposes. That's it. It's just for time gating purposes. You know, like he mentioned earlier in the videos that you all you got to make these quests and these storylines for dungeons. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know, you just create a storyline that's open ended, and they just don't know where these dungeons come from. You know, and that's part of the things that they're trying to figure out is where do these dungeons come from? Or there's a dungeon that no one knows how deep it goes. Nobody knows. You know, and nobody knows how it got there. And you just keep adding levels to the dungeon. Just like in, you know, pick up. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? And they don't know how deep it goes, right? Nobody's been to the bottom. And you just do the same thing. And that way you don't have to write any more storyline. And you can just add the dungeon. Just add the dungeon, make more stuff to fight. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. Stop thinking you have to put a storyline behind every dungeon. You know, that's absurd. That's how WoW did it, and that's what slowed down the releases of new dungeons and new raids. Is because, they gotta have a story. We gotta explain everything, guys. Who are these people? What are they doing? Who knows? Who cares? Stop giving them unique names. It's just a dragon. Just call it a dragon. What's wrong with calling it a dragon? It's a two-headed freaking dragon, man. There it is. Fight it. You know, have fun. There's nothing wrong with this, and I don't know where this mentality of people nowadays came from that they have to explain every little thing that they put into the game and have tons of lore. We gotta have all the lore. Nobody cares about your stupid lore, dude. Nobody freaking reads your quests. Nobody does it. They just want to click on accept and then look for a little freaking glowy thing on their mini map or something that they run to, and then they do something when they get there, and then they go back and they get their reward. That's all they want to do. They don't need your freaking 50-page Anne Rice novel quest bullshit going on for everything that happens in the game. We don't need it. Stop it. You're just slowing down your development process. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. So it almost the biggest fear is that maybe you don't play your other characters because, you know, they're already all progressed. But I think there's a sweet spot we can hit.
So it almost sounds like it is kind of like the Final Fantasy 14 character, only they're separate characters. Because everything in Final Fantasy 14...
And the reason I personally like the idea of separate characters is it lets you try out different looks for your character. Different, we haven't exactly settled on, race/species, but assuming we have something like that, like if you only have one character, what reason is there to roll up whatever ends up being an elf in our game? Or, you have one character that kind of presents male, but you...
So that is an important thing to catch on to. He said presents male. This is referring to the whole gender fluid, gender identity garbage that's going on. And if you're one of those people that it bothers you, then you may know right there that you're not going to want to play this game because it's going to have pronouns and all that stuff in there. As long as they don't shove it down my throat, I don't really care. You know, I'm just here to play a video game. So as long as it's not somehow being woven into the narrative or whatever, okay, whatever. I'm just going to play the game and do what I do. It's not going to be a problem. But for some people, maybe it's a big issue. I don't know. If you're one of those people, there you go. There's your answer. Are you going to play this game? I guess not.
You want to play as a female looking character instead.
Right.
Why not? You know,
Outside of just the class mechanics, is the experience going to be significantly different between classes? Like, are they going to have like different starting zones and stuff like that? Because you did just mention that, shared progression to a certain degree too amongst your all, so you don't have to redo your stuff all over again. But then, like, if you're rolling on another character that may potentially start in a different area and goes in the storyline takes you through the lore of that class and race, you would have to kind of do that, right? So, like, how would that work?
I think there's two problems with having, unique starting zones. One is right away it makes it hard to play with your friends. Like if you roll up one race and I roll up another, we can't start playing from the very beginning.
Okay.
The other one is you end up making a lot of content for every class. And if we're saying what's really important to us is have lots of classes, then that's probably something you have to sacrifice is really unique starting zones for them all. And we'll look at it, but I think that's right now we think that's a cost we're willing to pay. There are things you can do where maybe you get a different dialogue option if you're a certain class, or characters react to you differently. So hopefully it'll feel meaningful. We don't want it to feel so interchangeable that it's irrelevant. It's just that every time you make a lot of unique content, that throws up a barrier to adding more classes over time.
And then the last thing that they're going to discuss is combat. Don't completely agree here, but let's see what he has to say.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think Brian Holinka said that it was not going to be action combat and it was going to be more of a hybrid. So immediately in my mind, I'm thinking hybrid. Okay, Guild Wars 2 kind of seems pretty hybrid-y, even WildStar to a certain degree. Can you tell me a little bit more about the combat that you guys are expecting to implement into your game? Is it going to be very similar to Guild Wars 2? Because I personally think that amongst all hybrid tab targeting games, Guild Wars 2 really nailed it. I thought the combat was fantastic in that game.
Yeah, it's not a bad paradigm. I don't want to go too far down that road, or people will say, "Oh, it's just a clone of Guild Wars 2," which it's not. The reason we don't want to go full action often comes down to, if you think of a game like God of War or Dark Souls, if you dodge, you take 0 damage. Yep. And as soon as you make that decision, that means that gear matters a lot less than in an MMO where if you don't have good enough armor, you're just not going to be able to fight this opponent.
Okay, so that's true, but only in the very limited situation that he's describing it in. Like, just because you have dodge rolling in a 3D game that's, let's say it's Elden Ring. Okay, the developers could come out with a patch tomorrow that removed all the iframes from the game. And then the game plays almost the same, other than you can't dodge straight through an enemy's sword and like phase through it. You actually have to dodge the swing. And they could do the same thing in a freaking MMO super easy. Just because you give one person a dodge roll doesn't mean you have to give all the other classes a dodge roll. Maybe they have a dodge dash that's shorter ranged. They kind of like sidestep or something like that. And honestly, a ranged class probably shouldn't be rolling around to begin with. Leave that to the frontliners. But even a frontliner, I wouldn't want to be in heavy armor like friggin' Havel trying to dodge roll. That wouldn't make any sense. Those guys should just be taking the hits. You can also reduce your stamina recovery rate, so you don't recover your stamina as fast. You can make the dodge rolls take up a ton of stamina. So now, like, it takes up all your stamina to dodge roll one time, and then it takes a while to rebuild before you can do it again. Okay, you're dead in the water if you get smacked and you're the wrong class, getting hit by a heavy attack. So you got to do something about it. So there's a million and one ways
that you could put Souls-like combat into an MMO and make it work and feel great. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't really exercise a whole lot, but just so you know, if you try to get down on the floor and then stand back up again repeatedly, then you're gonna get tired real quick. You know, they're called burpees. They suck. So, yeah, even in real life, that's how it works. You know? So just do that. I don't understand. I don't want typical lock on freaking MMO play anymore. I want Dark Souls MMO combat. That's what I want. I want to feel like I'm playing through Dark Souls, you know, both aesthetically when I'm like the visuals and and the controls as well. You know, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for in my next MMO. You know, so I don't understand what the big issue here, and it would eliminate the twitchiness that he talks about. It's no longer twitchy gameplay. You know, like I just have a hard time wondering how does he call that twitchy gameplay, right? In World of Warcraft, sometimes we have to turn and run our butts off in order to dodge a huge incoming attack, and we just turn our character and run forward. So how is that twitchy gameplay? I'm still dodging the attack, right? I don't understand how that's different. You know, it maybe in the terms exactly how he's talking about, but he's not thinking outside the box. Get rid of iframes. I wouldn't put iframes in my MMO game. Why would you put iframes in your game? You know, just give us a chance to dodge or dash or something and physically remove ourselves from the path of the attack. And don't put freaking ridiculous kitty indicators on the ground like Wildstar. That was dumb. And everybody's all like, this is the best ever. What are you talking about? I see it coming on the ground. I just simply move my character a few inches to the left, and now it doesn't hit me. Whoop-de freaking do, man. That's dumb. Why would I want that? It makes everything super easy to avoid. So simple. So simple. We did not have that crap in World of Warcraft. We just saw fire on the floor and then we're like, oh man, let's not stand in the puddle of flames. And we moved. It was not hard.
Right.
It also means the game could be very, very twitchy, which is fun for some people, but not fun for others, and makes ping really, really matter and things like
Yeah.
that. So again, at the end of the day, we want it to feel like an MMO, and we want a lot of that depth around, do I use a long cooldown now, or that sort of thing. Where we think there's an opportunity is just making the combat kind of look a little better. In World of Warcraft, you stand against a knoll or whatever, and you hit the knoll, and the knoll hits you, and you hit the knoll, and it looks really silly, and there's
Right.
almost no motivation to move in the combat. Yeah. So we want to think a little bit more about, maybe dodging is not something you do constantly, but maybe you have a dodge button that puts you behind the enemy and then lets you hit them for extra damage from behind and things like that. Maybe we build up more combo like systems. Like Brian talks a lot about, Spider-Man has a pretty simple combo system where it's usually like, light hit, big hit, and then if you chain those together, you get something cool out of it. We think there's opportunities to do that while still keeping the long cooldowns and the kind of big bursts that are fun in MMOs.
Now, some kind of combo system or something like that, I can get behind that. Sure, why not? You know, like the combo system they had in Diablo 2 for the rogue, the assassin or whatever it was called. They had little floating orbs, you could freaking use those to empower your combos or whatever your abilities. I can get behind that. I don't have a problem with that. And then the dodge he talked about, where like maybe it puts you behind the enemy and stuff like that. It really just reminded me of, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? And the way he fights, he's constantly, really in MMO terms, he's using dodges and dodge attacks. Kick flips and all that stuff. We've seen that in Star Wars, Jedi Academy. So a lot of his attacks, really, when you think about it, is we saw in Jedi Academy. So these things have been done before, and it works, depending on what class you're at. I don't want to freaking be doing cartwheels as a warrior. That would just be ridiculous. It's like, what if you did a cartwheel as a freaking mage in Dark Souls while you're blasting, all these like freaking sorceries out upside down, like you're in freaking the Matrix or some crap. It would be hilarious, but I don't want to see that. It just kind of be immersion breaking. At any rate, that is my thoughts on their video and the game they're going to be making. It's got some really big issues here, if you ask me. With red shards just being, go fetch it. I need this item. I'm just going to go to the red shard and get that item. BRB. And then it's right back to living in the blue shards with nobody around. You're basically just spending, it sounds like you're going to spend probably 80% of your time playing the game on the blue shards. It really does. It sounds like freaking 80% of your time, maybe 70% of your time, will be on the blue shards. And then it's like, well, how are you going to find raids? Are you going to be able to openly communicate with people that are on the red shards while you're on a blue shard? Or will you have to traverse back to the red shard? Because if you have to traverse back to the red shard, then I have to go over there and then try to freaking get some groups if you're trying to even join a guild, in recruiting. It's going to be ridiculously terrible. It's going to be so hard. You're spending all your time there. You can't do anything in the blue shard, which, remember, most of your time needs to be spent in the blue shard. So you're not advancing very much because you can't play the blue shard because you got to be in the red shard to try to recruit people for your freaking guild. So I think they got some pretty important questions to answer. Some big issues to resolve here. I think they would do well to just shut the hell up, right? They need to shut the hell up until they get all these freaking questions answered, these problems solved, and they know exactly how everything's going to be functioning. That would really be in their best interest at this point. I think they've done way too much theory crafting in the public's eye, and it could come back to bite them, like big time. Because if they decide, hey, this isn't working, we just need to go back to the drawing board, and they have to re-envision a lot of these really big parts of their game that they've already put out to the public, then people are going to get upset. And rightfully so. They have no business talking about their game at this point unless they're actively shopping, ideas with the public, to where like the public is really just helping them make their game. And at that point, it's like, dude, you don't even have a proper vision for your game yourself, and then you're going to the public. I don't think the blue shards, red shards is going to work out for them. I definitely think that's going to be a detractor, and they're once again their player base is going to fall off a cliff. That's what's going to happen. Everybody's going to join the game to try out this new game because it's a new game, and then their player base is going to fall off a cliff because there's no way you can divide your community that heavily and expect your game to stand the test of time and hold a large player base. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to work. But what do you think? How well do you think the game's going to do? Are you excited for this game? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe. Click it. Click it. Click the button. Click the button. Like it. Like it. You know you like it. And the subscribe button. Click that too. And then click it to all. Make sure you tick the bell to all. You got to do that. Thanks.